أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to the 7th episode of the series on Muharram at IslamiCity. We'd like to thank Brother Alim of IslamiCity, Brother Aji, and the rest of the team to make this possible. With me is Dr. Abdullah, who is not unknown to any one of us. We salute and respect his vision and his leadership, particularly in terms of interfaith relations. And that is one of the focuses of this series, so that as Muslims, we understand who Imam Hussein alayhi salam was, and that Imam Hussein does not just belong to the Shias, but he belongs to the entire humanity. Today, we talk about resilience in adversity. Truly that, if you look at it in those three words, lies the essence of what Karbala is all about. So in this episode, we will explore Imam Hussein's remarkable resilience during the trials that he faced, and look at emphasizing how his mental and emotional strength took him through these days and how he handled the adversity with grace and patience. So, talking about resilience, let me paint a picture today that on that somber day of the 7th of Muharram, which is today, history witnessed a defining milestone moment that really tested the very essence of human resilience. As the scorching sun borne down on this parched land of Karbala, and as the forces of Yazid, fueled by cruelty and power, sought to break the spirit of this noble man and his devoted caravan, they heartlessly cut off the flow of this life-giving substance called water. 7th of Muharram, historians record that water was cut off, leaving this weary caravan to endure a cruel thirst that mirrored perhaps the drought in their hearts too. And amongst the brave souls who stood unwaveringly by Hussein's side in this thirst too, ranged from octogenarian warriors like Habib ibn Mazahir, Muslim ibn Hawsaja. We talked about some of them in the past episodes. We also had Imam Hussein's tender 4-year-old daughter, Ruqayya, her innocent eyes perhaps reflecting the confusion amidst the chaos, not to mention a 6-month-old baby, son of Imam Hussein, who was also part of the family and the caravan. This defining moment in history remains etched in our hearts when we listen to it as a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit, a reminder that in the depths of suffering also hope can still emerge and the righteous can prevail. And that's exactly why we are talking about this incident 14 centuries later. Very quickly, a word on resilience, which is a fundamental quality in the human experience, can be understood as the ability to adapt, to recover, and grow in the face of adversity. It encompasses 3 interconnected dimensions, which are physical, emotional, and spiritual. The physical dimension of resilience is the body's capacity to withstand and recover from physical stresses, injuries, illness, and what have you. This includes maintaining a healthy lifestyle, exercising regularly, and nurturing our bodies to promote our overall well-being. The emotional dimension involves the ability to cope and bounce back from emotional challenges, such as trauma, loss, setbacks. It's all about developing and coping strategies. And this is not the time to start describing the coping strategies. There are many tools available to look at this. But basically, it's all about fostering a positive mindset, forming healthy emotional connections with one's own mind as well as others. And last but not the least, is a spiritual dimension. Resilience, in terms of spiritual dimension, is all about finding meaning and purpose in life, particularly during difficult times. It involves a sense of inner strength, connecting with one's values and beliefs, and seeking a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. In these three dimensions of resilience, interwoven and influencing each other, lead to improvements in ourselves, creating a power of synergy that enhances our ability to face these trials with great courage and determination. So, to understand resilience, it's not about avoiding challenges, but about harnessing our inner resources to navigate through them with grace and emerge stronger on the other side. Indeed, it's a dynamic process which can be cultivated over time, empowering us to force life's complexities with greater fortitude and adaptability. In the blazing heat of Karbala, Imam Hussein and his companions demonstrated remarkable physical resilience. They endured harsh conditions of the desert, braving the scorching sun, being deprived of the basic necessities like water. Despite these trials, they stood firm, refusing to yield to oppressive forces, and their unwavering physical endurance teaches us the importance of strength and determination in the face of adversity. In such an environment of this desert terrain, unforgiving sands, which pose a constant struggle for them for each step, most individuals would have succumbed to the despair, perhaps abandoning their principles for the sake of personal survival. Imam Hussein demonstrated an extraordinary level of resilience, and their bodies, fueled and weakened, still pressed on with a determination rooted in their unwavering commitment to such justice and truth. Emotional resilience, on the other hand, pertains to our capacity to navigate, as I said, to cope and with intense emotions. Imam Hussein witnessed the suffering of his loved ones and injustices that were infiltrated or inflicted upon his loyal followers, but still did not succumb to despair or anger. It's a profound aspect of human strength that enables individuals to navigate and cope with these intense emotions evoked by challenging circumstances and the tragic event of Karbala that Imam Hussein faced as he witnessed the suffering loss of his loved ones. For example, the loss of his loyal half-brother Abbas was a particularly devastating blow for Imam Hussein. Abbas was not only a brave warrior, but a devoted, confident, and a supporter. He was, as is called, the flag bearer, the alambardar of his army. And yet, despite knowing the dangers that awaited on the battlefield, Abbas fearlessly goes to get water for the thirsty children, and his tragic demise, where he loses his arms, leaves a void in Imam Hussein's heart as he mourned. And there are many others that, fell on the plains of Karbala. His beloved son, Ali Akbar, the loss of his infant son, Ali Asghar, were all tests of resilience. And yet, in this grief and in this sorrow, he faced this with challenge. This challenge completely and fully. I just want to take you in his final moments on the battlefield, facing the enemy who had betrayed their oaths. Imam Hussein made several very poignant speeches that truly resonated what we call his spiritual resistance. This resilience was such that he was able to do this with a calm and a composed demeanor, not one of fear or bitterness, but of unwavering resolve. His powerful words, famously quoted, he finally says, if you do not believe in any religion, at least be free in your present life. This profound message that transcends religious boundaries speaks to the universal value of free thought against blind obedience or following. The statement emphasized the intrinsic worth of individual liberty and the imperative to make a choice one way or another to stand up against oppression and tyranny. His words reveal the depth of his resilience and a profound connection, the spirituality, the profound connection with the divine. Yet in the face of suffering and imminent death. In today's world, where many authoritarian systems and injustices prevail, and we've covered this during our last session during the month of Ramadan, in terms of the persecution, and the example of Imam Hussein remains so very relevant in today. I mean, look at North Korea, notorious for extreme oppressive control over its citizens. The Chinese party's grip over power, the repression of minority groups like the Uyghurs, the Muslims in Xinjiang province, who face mass detentions. In Myanmar, you have all these violations against ethnic minorities like the Rohingyas. All these continue to raise international concern. The sad part is these continue. Who speaks for them? That is a question, and that is where Imam Hussein's legacy comes to the fore to say, speak up. This is a time to do something about it. Allow me to end, before I pass this over to Dr. Aslam, the words of the famous historian Thomas Carlyle. And he says, and I quote, that the best lesson we get from the misfortune of Karbala is that Hussein and his partners were inflexible adherents to God. I repeat, Hussein and his partners were inflexible adherents to God. They represented that the numerical predominance doesn't check with regards to reality and the lie. The triumph of Hussein, notwithstanding his minority, simply wonders me. And there are many of us. We take inspiration from his plan of unwavering trust in Allah's plan, that when faced with difficulty and challenges, we too can turn our faith for strength and resilience. Believing in a higher purpose allows each one of us to find a meaning and purpose in our very existence, in our struggles, particularly when the path ahead seems to be uncertain and daunting. Dr. Aslam, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Dr. Walji, for this profound explanation of this basic human value, resilience. In fact, if we want to understand the resilience of Imam Hussein in the real sense of the term, we should challenge the living Yazid of our time. And we would know what resilience is. And where do we stand in terms of our relationship with Imam Hussein and in terms of our understanding of resilience. Dr. Walji, I was looking at various definitions of the word resilience. And the definition in physics and engineering fascinated me. Resilience is defined as the capacity of a material to absorb energy when it is deformed elastically. And when we look at it in the events that were taking place in Arabia at that particular time, we find the system that the Prophet ﷺ has introduced based on the divine teaching was being deformed and it was corrupted. The very fact that the Quran was raised on the spearheads, the very fact that the politicization of events had reached to a point where fraud was introduced to deprive people of their rights, where the dynastic rule was introduced against the spirit of Islam, it was a corruption. So, what basically Imam's life demonstrates is that he understood the resilience of the system introduced by his grandfather on the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he wanted the system to recover from its deficiencies and the catastrophic deformities that have been introduced. This was the entire struggle, the resilience of the system, that the system that is being introduced must be preserved and must continue as, because that is a system that guarantees human dignity, that is a system that guarantees civil rights, that is a system that guarantees commitment to God in a real sense of the term. And then the Imam absorbed that systematic resilience in his own psychology. As you mentioned, the resilience in psychology is the ability to recover from all that is happening around you that is negative, and then turn misfortune into a sign of hope for the future. And this is precisely what he did, that even though he realized that there were not many people around him in the physical sense of the term that you also alluded to, in the political sense of the term that was prevalent at that particular time. Otherwise, when he went to Mecca, why was he not welcomed? Because there were forces in Mecca who wanted to have their own claim on the powers. They were more concerned about their powers. And they refused to stand on principles or that resilience for the system. And that is something that we find, and I think that needs to be said very clearly. Now, the resilience that was shown, as you pointed out at various, was so intense in his character that it was imbibed and what you call parroted by the people who survived. When we look at the life of the lioness of Karbala, Zainab, who could think that a woman would stand up in the courts of Yazid and challenge the authority and negate everything that was being given as a justification of that murder? Who would have thought? Fearless. I mean, it's unfortunately what has happened is that as a result of that sectarian politics that has been going on in the Muslim world for the last several centuries, we have lost sense of direction, that the people who would have been our real models and role models in the difficult times in which we have, because in every century we have Yazid alive, but there are not many who could show the resilience both in the system and both in the psychology. And that is, I think, something that needs to be understood, that perhaps we should look at it from that perspective, and that requires some bold and extra efforts on our part to move forward and say spade is spade, to not ride on two boats, but to be very clear. And then when we say about it, we clearly define our terminology. Being a critique of the events and being a critique of the people who at that particular time compromised with the deformities of the system that were being introduced does not mean that you are insulting a person or you are humiliating a person. It simply says that you are looking things from a principled perspective and within the framework of the divine thinking and the divine knowledge and the divine guidance. And I think this is something that we ought to understand. Imam's life and the life of all those who survived is basically a message that sounds well for all those people who stand for truth and justice. Because within our own community, we have that one. But unfortunately, as we have been witnessing, those sacrifices and those resilience have been basically grouped as the Shia uh, aspect of Muslim life. I mean, which is totally illogical because the resilience of Imam was coming from the resilience of the system of the Quran. And anyone who is saying that is basically challenging the foundation of the faith itself. So I think, I may be saying things in a strong word, but this is what my feeling is that our own sectarianism has led us to a point we have compromised with the deformities of the resilience of the system and ignoring the resilience that was demonstrated by Imam Hussein and his family. And I think when we go back to that lesson, probably we can think in terms of ushering into a new era of Muslim thinking where we can once again be the champions of human dignity and human rights, not for our own selves, but for all. And I think that is what this resilience wants us to remember. Back to you, Dr.
I would say, Amin Summa Amin to that prayer, that truly it's a legacy of Imam Hussein, that we as Muslims, the Muslim Ummah, is able to live up to that and become champions of social justice and human rights. But at the same time, it also means that each one of us also tries to do our own bit. In our own lives, we are continuously faced with tests and trials. And while these may not be of the magnitude anywhere near of those faced by Imam Hussein, they are significant in shaping our character and our spiritual journey. That is a learning from Karbala. These trials are not intended to break us, but rather to cultivate strength and resilience. And truly, you give a remarkable explanation going back to physics, and it was so relevant. The metaphor was just simply, enlightening. So thank you for that, Dr. Aslam. But we need to have a deeper understanding of our own capabilities. And this helps us to understand and appreciate. It's not just mouthing platitudes, but to appreciate the value of patience and perseverance. And absolutely, that spirituality of having unwavering trust in Allah's plan. We learn from Imam Hussein that life is not about evading or surrendering to our difficulties. And particularly in this day and age, with the pandemic of mental health that plagues our society today, it's so much more important that we try and learn that life is not about evading or surrendering to our difficulties, but about meeting them head on with courage, conviction, and faith in our Maker. We need to embrace our struggles as opportunities for spiritual growth and moral elevation in transforming these challenges. As people of faith, Muslims, non-Muslims, our faith in our Creator and His plan for us is our greatest source of strength. And it's this faith that imbues our lives with meaning and purpose, and it guides us through our darkest hours and provides us with hope and fortitude necessary to endure and overcome our trials. It's really all about mindset. Yes, mental health is a real issue for us, and I do not want to in any way minimize it. We need to have counseling, we need to have assistance, but at the same time, there is a lot to do with the mindset as to how we deal with it. So, with that said, I'd like to pass this back to Dr. Aslam to give us a few final words of wisdom and a prayer to close this session. Dr. Aslam, please.
Thank you very much. I think perhaps the time has come when we have to start assessing our own resilience in the light of what we have been talking about, Imam Hussein, and see what is our capacity in terms of our relationship to resilience, to challenge the living Yazids of our time. And there are many. Our communities, our countries, our world, regardless of the faith they claim and champion to be, and regardless of what they say. But that understanding about the living Yazids have to be analyzed within the context of the resilience of our system of beliefs, system of ideas that were the foundation of the resilience of Imam Hussein. I think we should never compromise on those things, and we should also realize that we are living now in a world where things cannot be hidden for long, and then there are people of conscience all over the world, in all communities, in all religious groups, who are willing to take a stand on these issues, provided they are taken away from the rhetorics that those living Yazid often offer to convince the people that their actions are justified. And we hope that we would definitely move forward from where we are, and at least next year when we talk about these issues, we are a few steps ahead where we are today. With that, we conclude the discussion today. The recitation of the Quranic surah, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to become the people who are not losers and who are constantly striving based on their commitment to perseverance for justice and truth. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.